Good evening and welcome to the City of Bowie Workforce Development and Life Skills Training Program, Module 2 for Spring 2021. This evening, we will be presenting on Introduction to Innovation and Entrepreneurship, Part 2, and also talk about developing solutions and business ideas with Mark Lawrence of Incubate and Jasmine Brunson, also of Incubate. We are going to give everyone just a minute or two to log on. While we're waiting, I'm going to remind everyone that, as always, you can raise your hand if you would like to make a comment. You can also type it in the chat or the Q&A. And I have uploaded the session recordings for the first week of this program to the program website, which is at cityofbowie.org/worktraining, as you can see from my screen. If you have any questions or issues with accessing the material on the website, please get in touch with me. We encourage you, if you were not able to attend last week, to view that presentation. It was also really good. We had a lot of really great ideas and engagement from you guys. So thank you everyone who participated. And I'm just going to show you guys the agenda for this evening. We're doing the introduction right now. Then I'll turn it over to Mark and Jasmine to talk about Turning Problems into Opportunities Part 2, a continuation of the presentation they did last week. Then we will have a couple of breaks built in, and then around 7, we will pivot to generating ideas for businesses. And as always, if you have any questions or remarks, or if anything's going too fast, you want Mark to slow down or clarify anything, please just raise your hand or type it in the chat. I'm going to give everyone a chance to ask questions right now before we get started. I don't see any questions. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it back over to Mark. We have one person in the chat saying, hello, everyone. Hello, Noah. Thank you for joining us again. So now Mark and Jasmine will take it away.
Thanks, Kay. Let me share my screen. All right, hopefully everyone can see my screen. Just type in the chat to confirm, or, Kay, let me know.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so again, welcome. I know it's a great sunny day outside, but we're going to have some fun while the sun sets. So thank you for participating in a lively session last week. Jasmine and I want to talk to you this week a little bit more about, the innovation entrepreneur mindset, and how do you turn everyday problems into opportunities, and subsequently turn some of those into solutions and business ideas. So with that, just everyone, I'm sure everyone can see the presentation, make sure there's no technical difficulties. And then I just want you to think to yourself and just talk about, what do you want to get out of this webinar, right? So the first webinar gave you the basics about the mindset, gave you basics about what innovation, and hopefully you took away from that anyone can be an innovator, anyone can be an entrepreneur. It's just the discipline, the problem, the passion that you have to have, and the rigor to go behind and beyond that. So I'm assuming everyone can see me. There's no technical difficulties. If any, go in the chat. But with that, I'll jump right into the expected outcomes for today. So we're going to talk about, showing a way of thinking that helps you solve problems like a designer. It's called design thinking. So we're going to walk through the different steps, and we're going to sort of simulate an exercise. So it'll be very interactive. So I'll be relying on you folks to chime in on the chat and answer some of the questions and some of the discussion. And then after that, we're going to talk about, what does it take to test specific ideas that come out of the design thinking process, determine if it's a good solution or business opportunity. So before we do that, excuse me one second, let's pick up where we left off. We said that, innovating requires identifying the problems that matter and moving them through systematically to deliver elegant solutions. So we know knowing where and what to innovate is most important, knowing how. And innovators tend to look at the hardest problems first, where there's no easy answers. And then innovations do not count until they are in the market. And again, most innovations that more of the popular innovations that are about bringing elegance and simplicity to hard problems, but innovations range the scale. Then we went on to talk about the 10 types of innovation, right? We said they were in 3 categories: configuration, offering, and experience. And we provided some examples. And a lot of that's in the recording and it's on the webinar if you want to refresh. But we said it's structured into 3 categories, and you can look at any way to analyze or diagnose the current innovation or any competition. Then we also talked about entrepreneurial mindset components, and those being comfortable with risk, critical thinking and problem solving, and creativity and innovation. And lastly, we close with problems are opportunities, right? It's a mindset. So, dwelling on problems causes stress and hampers productivity. But if you look at them as opportunities, you accept that problems are inevitable, and you can, steel yourself to your first impression of those problems, and then learn to objectively evaluate threats and consequences. And the whole thing is, if you talk to any successful entrepreneur or any professional with a positive attitude, you'll find one key trait in common. All of them have this unique mentality that looks at problems and challenges differently. Rather than seeing as burdensome forces of opposition, they see them as opportunities to learn, opportunities to grow, opportunities to improve or adjust in a way that leaves them better off than before the problem existed. And this mentality has a lot of benefits. It reduces stress and it contextualizes the problem. So that was a recap of the first session. Jasmine, anything that I missed or anything you want to add? Okay. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about design thinking. So what is design thinking? So basically, design thinking starts with a couple things. It starts with empathy, this notion of empathy. And empathy is really having you understand the emotions, the intentions, the thoughts, and the needs of others so that you're in a better position, basically, to solve their problems or provide them valuable solutions. And then the other sort of thing that you want to think about when you think about design thinking, that it's around human-centered design. And it's a methodology used to solve complex problems and to find desirable solutions. And it's really around empathizing, interpreting, ideate, creating a minimal viable product prototype, testing and evolving. And we're going to talk a little bit about that process today. We're going to walk through some exercises and we're going to have some fun. So before that, let's talk about design thinking as a business itself, right? So it started by a firm called IDEO, which was founded in 1991. And it was a product of a merger of a couple of design firms, a firm called David Kelly Design, another firm called ID2, Matrix Pollard Design, and these companies were all in California, Palo Alto. And what IDEO did is it created a process, it created this design thinking as a business model and helped it become one of the most 25 innovative companies in the world. And it's won multiple awards more than any other design firm. So the methodology stemmed out something they were delivering to clients, and they created their own intellectual property around that. So with that, let's talk about what design thinking has done, right? And I will give you a couple examples. So, we're heavily Apple products over here at Incubate, but we'll give you an example. So design thinking, that process was used to help Apple Computer develop its first mouse in 1983. So the first usable computer mouse had a rib cage, this basic rib cage, connected to a wire that held it together. And it was really said, okay, now that people were interacting with computers in a different way, we had to create something that was more flexible, that reflected hand gestures and hand motions. And as we go to today, the mouse of today, you can swipe, click, and apply different pressures for it to interact with the computer differently. So the whole idea was taking this external ancillary device to a big computer and giving it more functions that mimic everyday hand gestures and movements so that you can navigate across the computer. So that's one example that came out as a result of design thinking. Jasmine, do you want to talk about this other example?
Unfortunately, it looks like Jasmine's connection might have been cut off.
Okay, that's fine. So another example was, again, something more relatable. So Nintendo's first Game Boy was a device that played in monochrome color, blitz. You could play simple games. And that was the user design, something that was mobile, something that was portable, something that was interactive, and something that was fun. that has evolved to what we know today as the Nintendo Switch, which is full color. It attaches to external TV devices. And again, the design is more elegant. You can integrate gaming, whether you want to be mobile or portable, or whether you want to be stationary where you're at. Another example, which some of you may not remember, but it will give you context. I know you know the today version, was a device called a Palm 5. The Palm 5 in 1999 was the first digital personal assistant made by Palm Computing, which was a division of 3Com, which was a heavy industrial computer and product company. And it distinguished itself by having a sleek design. You could track your calendar. It was rechargeable, and it helped you digitize and organize your life. That such has been integrated to what we know now and take for granted as the everyday smartphone. And right now on the right, that's a Google phone. It has its own operating system, and it's like a pocket computer that's in your device. But it was basically designed to have the user's needs in mind, that you get computing, you can get information, you can get access, you can get maps, you can make voice and video calls while on the go. So again, these are all of the inventions and products that were created by design thinking. So let's talk a little bit about design versus design thinking, because it's a practice, it's an idea, it's things that we go through as we think about it. So when you think about designing being a design thinker, it's usually centered around the individual. It's usually centered around creating a product. It's usually centered around, merging engineering with art. So I'm designing something, I'm creating, but you transition that over to design thinking, and that's more about getting together in teams, creating user experiences, and creating the intersection between technology, the actual business problems, and human interaction. So that's the key fundamental difference between design and design thinking. And then when you talk about optimal design, back to what I talked about before, the optimal design is feasible, whether it's, with technology, it's viable, there's some business or some need or solution it solves, and it has human values intertwined. It's usable and it's desirable. And that meets all the criteria of the overlaps of being functional, being based on a process, and being based on emotional reaction. So if you achieve all of these things, you've chosen to say that you've achieved the optimal design, and thus, it's designed, and it's designed with intent, and it's designed with the user in mind. So let's talk a little bit about the design thinking steps. So it starts with empathy, right? Learning about the audience for whom you're designing. And then after you do that, it's through user interviews, creating things, a profile. Like when I asked you last session, for those that you participated, how do you go about determining what you get a person as a birthday gift? Folks talked about their need, what they know about them, what they like. So that's an early form, or as an example of empathy, having your user in mind, or the person that you want to create a product for, give a gift to in this case. The second step of that is what we call defining, right? So you'll learn a lot from the empathy phase, but you construct a point of view that's based on the user needs and insight, and you narrow that down into a specific problem, a statement, or a solution that you want to create. The next phase of that is really ideating. That's where you brainstorm and you come up with as many solutions as possible. Nothing's off the table. So you can be creative, you can think outside the box, you can just come up with whatever comes to mind. After you do that, you narrow that down, you prototype. So you build a representation on one or more of the ideas that you came up with in the ideation phase, and you show that to the potential end user or to others just to get feedback, and then you test. So you go back to the original person you're designing for, and you test your ideas for feedback, and you run through the process iteratively until you reach that optimal design. So next, we're going to watch a video that talks a little bit about this in more detail.
A long time ago, if humans wanted to move something, we had to carry it. And as time went on, we were able to solve this problem and millions of others. In life, we're always bumping into new problems. And while we have the desire to solve them, it's often hard to find the right solution or even know where to start. That's where design thinking comes in. Design thinking is a process that seeks to solve complex problems by approaching it from the user's perspective. It also aims to turn your ideas into tangible, testable products as quickly as possible. The design thinking framework can be drilled down into 3 distinct phases: immersion, ideation, and implementation. But if we zoom in a little bit, these phases can be broken down into 5 actionable stages that make up the entire design thinking process: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. In the empathize stage, you'll get to know your target audience and paint a clear picture of who the users are, what challenges they face, and what they need. This can be achieved through interviews, user testing, surveys, basically by talking to people and understanding how they think, act, and feel. Based on what you learn, you'll then define your problem statement. When creating your problem statement, focus on the user's needs over the business goals. Keeping it human-centered is the theme here. This problem statement will act as your North Star. If you start to trail off or get lost, just look back to the problem statement to refocus. With our problem statement defined, we're ready to ideate. Keep in mind, innovation is rarely born in isolation, so don't fly solo. Get up from your desk, cubicle, or spaceship, gather some key individuals from other teams, and collaborate. The name of the game is quantity over quality. So think outside of the box and explore new angles. There are many ideation techniques to get you and your team started. A great reference is our Design Thinking Handbook by Eli Woolery. Check it out at designbetter.com. Next stop, prototyping. Prototypes come in all shapes and sizes, from basic paper models to interactive digital mock-ups. The goal is to have something tangible that can be tested on real people. Getting your prototype into the hands of real users will give you great insight on if the solution you provided is valid or if it needs some more work. Based on their feedback, you can make changes and improvements before spending the time and money building the real thing. Although these steps appear to be sequential, keep in mind, design thinking is less linear and more iterative. At each stage, you'll most likely discover new things that require you to go back and repeat a previous step. And there you have it, design thinking in a nutshell. Now get out there and start applying design thinking to your work today. You'll be glad you did. For more information on this,
So let's talk about that. Hopefully, is Jasmine joined us?
Yes, Jasmine has been able to log back on. Jasmine, can you speak through your audio?
Yeah, my audio works now.
Great,
Okay,
thanks.
thank you. So Jasmine, talk to us a little bit about design thinking, what you understand about the process and what you like about it.
For sure. So overall, design thinking for me is just like just being as creative as possible. Definitely talking to those stakeholders and especially like your team about, whatever ideas you have and getting ideas from other people. But I think that's the best part about it is the collaboration piece.
Great, thank you. So now, hopefully, folks, you can type in the chat or you can raise your hand. So when you hear empathy, what are some thoughts that come to you about empathy? And can you give examples when you thought about ways you can, build empathy? How can you build empathy or understand the view of others? So it looks like we have one hand raised.
Yeah, I promoted you to panelist, so you should be able to talk.
When I hear empathy, I feel I think about other people's feelings, and it's like sometimes you think about theirs more than yours. You try to reason and sympathize. And what was the other question?
Well, and what are some examples? How are the ways you can build empathy?
Build empathy.
Yeah.
I guess, being more social and I would say putting others first and, helping others out.
Great. No, that's all good answers. Thanks, Ariel. Ariel, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, thank you. All right, that was great. Who else? What are some other thoughts? You can type it in the chat or you can raise your hand.
Nothing in the chat so far.
Okay. All right. So again, like Ariel mentioned, it's really understanding and sharing the feelings of another, right? It's when you put yourself in someone else's shoes and trying to experience the world as they do. So ways you can build empathy are a couple, right? So research, and research could be social, just talking to people, asking them questions, interviewing, right? Getting them, asking them specific questions on a specific topic, just observing your people, observing your surroundings, and then having sort of group discussions. A lot of this is being to be collaborative so you can get different perspectives on what you're talking about when you're trying to understand and build empathy. And then another, I guess, Alicia just put in the chat, when someone fails a test, you try to relate to them, with them, you don't mention you got a good grade. That is a great example. That is definitely showing empathy, right? So you're understanding that, they might not have grasped the concepts as fast as you are, but, that's having that sympathy with them. Yes, that is a great example. What's one more in the chat or a quick raise hand? Because this is important. This is fundamental. When you're talking about designing for humans and designing outside, because a lot of time entrepreneurs that I work with or folks I coach, they create stuff for them, right? And they say, look, I have the greatest idea. It works for me. But they often don't talk to others or have this empathy step. And that leads to reworking, that leads to, resources that they could leverage a different way. So empathy is really fundamental when you talk about designing solutions. Okay, so now that you've had empathy, right? The next step is really defining the problem. Clearly defining the problem. What is the problem you're trying to solve based on your understanding, your interactions with the users, putting yourself in someone else's shoes, and then you reframe this problem as a question, right? So whatever the problem is, you turn it into a question, because basically it always starts with how might we. So how might we educate more youth in the city of Bowie on innovation and entrepreneurship, right? So the empathy is, we know that this is a different pathway. It's an alternative pathway for most. Putting ourselves in your shoes, we know we want to explore you to multiple options, and you're still figuring out what you want to do with your life, your career path, your trajectory, what you want to do in high school, what you want to further pursue in college. And we said, okay, how might we expose you to innovation and entrepreneurship in a succinct way? And then we ideate on solutions. And the solution is this webinar with this content that we're presenting to you. So that's defining the problem. Can someone type in the chat or raise their hand and come up with a good how might we statement based on a problem they think they would want to solve or a solution they want to deliver? Okay, give it a second. So Jasmine, you're my default. So when you were thinking of your first idea for a business that you pitched in the Pitch Gladiator competition, can you come up with a how might we statement to talk about it? Because you were one of the early ones looking at immersive media, AR, VR. What was the problem you were trying to define when you thought about your first idea for a business?
For sure. I think for me, I wanted something that bridged a gap between two different industries. You have music, and then you have, the overarching VR technology. And so what we see is, especially in this growing age, is we combine regular day, industries, and we add microcosms of just technology, and we just make that industry much better and much more efficient. And so that's my how might we change the way we view and conceptualize, bridging the gap between different industries. I wanted to do it with music and VR because I love music and I love technology.
Great, thank you. That was a perfect example. Any others? Any folks want to share or try to wrestle with a problem and we can form that into a how might we statement? And it's okay if it's not, but I think the best way to think about this is to talk through examples. So how might we make it easier to kill bacteria with technology? That is a great statement and problem to solve. That is a great one. Thanks, Ava. That was great. What is another one? How might we speed up police investigations while also being more thorough? That's a great one, John. That is great. You guys are getting it. Give me one more since you guys are so good at it. Someone else. Come on. Okay. How might we fix the pay gap for the top 1% and the rest of us? Again, That is a great how might we statement. So you get the idea of defining a problem. That's great. So the next step in the process, which is my favorite step, right, is ideation. The idea, the whole idea of generating and brainstorming ideas. This is when you're free flowing. You're starting with listing as many things as possible, whether it be on paper, whether you use a digital problem, and you come up with how many ideas that, to solve the solution to your problem. And you push past the obvious solutions, and that's where you come up with sort of breakthrough ideas, right? So basically, it's really about thinking about a lot of ideas, no matter how silly, to eventually find a creative solution. And then sometimes it's a sketch, sometimes it's other things, right? And then we'll get to the next step. But for some of the how might we statements, throw out a couple ideas, one idea or one or two for each, and other folks can chime in as well. So you might not have invented the how might we statement, but what are some ideas to say, let's say, how might we make it easy to kill bacteria with technology? What are some ideas for that? And again, nothing's too silly, nothing's off the wall, but type some things in the chat or raise your hand to speak to it. Okay. Any takers on that one? So let's go with another one. So how might we speed up police investigations while also being more thorough? What are some ideas on that? And again, this is a quick exercise. Usually design thinking sessions take a couple hours or a couple weeks, because sometimes they're months, but this is just a quick to get you into the experience. So I heard someone speaking. Is that someone with a idea?
Me, I was like, maybe we could, how, change some type of laws or make a law as to for us to speed up the process, or some people might protest, say that okay, it's not fair that it's taking this much time, so that's one way. Another way is, well, those are the only two ways.
That's great. No, but those are great. Again, all great ideation solutions, and those are great. Thanks, Ariel.
Yeah, we also have John is raising his hand. So,
Okay, so yes,
John, you can unmute yourself.
I was just going to say, it's like creating a device that'll be able to analyze the motion of, I guess, particles in the air to determine, how people move and what happened in the scene of the crime.
Okay, so that was back to the first statement, right? How might we make it easy to kill bacteria with technology, or were you talking about something else?
That was for the second one. That was for the how we speed up.
Okay. Now that's great. Again, that's good.
We do have a comment about the bacteria question. Ava said creating a UV light machine to kill bacteria on the surface of an object.
Yep, that's a perfect idea too, as well, with all into consideration. Okay, what else? Let's talk about how do we fix the pay gap for the top 1% and the rest of us? What are some ideas around that? And that's a real interesting one. Yeah, and again, nothing's off the wall, nothing's off the table. Yes, it's changing laws, it's doing stuff with taxes, but what are some ideas there?
I mean, I hope you guys have enough history to remember that communism was one suggestion that didn't necessarily work out the way folks thought it would. There might be some things there that could be refined and reapplied to modern problems.
Right? Make more laws that prevent them from getting the rich in the first place, increasing minimum wages. Yep. Again, all good ideas. So you get it, right? So really, when you take your how might we statement, the whole ideation session is just think of a lot of ideas, and then eventually you narrow those down and you get them into the solution. So the next phase around this process is once you've defined your problem, you've ideated, you've had empathy, you defined your problem, you ideated on some solutions, you pick a couple and you prototype those. And what prototyping really means is just testing, right? You try to get data to make them tangible. They don't have to look nice, they don't have to be perfect. They just test the functions of your ideas. And this is where you can be very creative and innovative. So there's various ways to build prototypes, right? So, what are some ways folks think they could prototype some of these how might we statement or some of the ideas that they've come up with? And again, it could be simple, it doesn't have to be too complex, but what are ways to prototype? Okay, Jasmine, so I'm going to turn to you while we wait. What are some of the ways you prototype some of the ideas that you come up with in the brainstorming session?
Are you saying in context of what these guys just put out, or just?
And just in general.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. For example, like if you're developing an app, there's a lot of resources out there where you can just you don't have to have any background in coding. You can just create what you think or what you want your app to look like. I can drop some of those resources in the chat, but that's a great way to prototype an idea.
Okay, great. Okay.
We also have
Ariel?
Ariel's raising her hand.
Yep, Ariel, what are some ideas for you for prototyping?
When it came to speeding up the what was the question? When it came to speeding up the investigations after making the law, let's say if we did to change it to make them speed it up, we could do I would say a trial, like a test trial to see if it works out and to see if it actually, makes sense. And if it does, keep it. If it doesn't, it leaves.
Great. No, that's perfect. That's great. And I see that Ava put in the chat creating 3D models. Great. All right. So, here's a few ways to build prototypes. That's what we talked about. You can sketch, role play, like if you want to play out a situation, right? You can create a scenario with a script and sort of act it out. You can storyboard it, right? What storyboard means is creating a visual representation of the solution that you want to solve or the ideas you come up with. You can actually build something, right? Whether it's a piece of code or build a sort of model with cardboard or different representations. And then as was mentioned, you can 3D print it, right? You can create some sort of plastic resin or something like that, or more advanced other sort of three-dimensional representation of your idea. So those are all the different ways to build prototypes. So then the last step is really after you develop, you've empathized, you've defined your problem, you've ideated on solutions, you've developed your prototype. The next step is to really test that prototype to see if it works. Gather feedback from others. How do they feel about the role play situation? How do they like the storyboard? How do they react to what you've built? Or what do they see in what you've 3D printed? And then you always ask, how can I improve my solution to my problem? And this is the stage that can be reiterated multiple times, even after the product is created and deployed. You always want to test your solution to make sure that it still has the user's need in mind, it still has that empathy, and it's still solving the problem that you want it to solve. So what we did at a high level there is run through all the steps of the design thinking process. Jasmine, is there anything or any other feedback you want to add?
No, well, I'm gonna drop it in chat too. Every time I think about this, I think of Norman's design principles. And so that might be something you guys can do on your free time. Just check out those 5 principles. But I'm gonna drop that link in the chat soon.
And we'll make all the stuff available when we send the recap. So that's great. So I think right now, this is a great time to take a quick sort of 5-minute break. We've talked through the whole process. And then when we come back, we'll run through like an example, like a challenge. We couldn't do it live because again, we're virtual, but we'll talk you through an example and play a video around a design thinking exercise. So it's now, what is it? 6:30.
6:34. Let's say 6:40 in round numbers.
Yeah, let's come back at 6:40. And so, get a beverage, stretch your legs, but come back with your design thinking chops and your heads on so we can talk through an example.
I will give everyone a 2-minute warning and a 1-minute warning before we reconvene. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Everyone, this is your 2-minute warning. 2-minute warning. We will be reconvening in 2 minutes at 6:40. Please get back from stretching and getting water and what have you. 2-minute warning. One-minute warning, everyone, 1-minute warning. Please get back to your desks or laptops or wherever you're sitting. We will reconvene in 1 minute at 6:40. 1-minute warning.
Great.
Anyone who's back and has had thoughts about the questions we were talking about before we take a break, feel free to drop them in the chat, or start composing your thoughts.
Yes, Kay, and that's a perfect segue. So what are some questions you all have about design thinking and how it's used?
All right, we have someone raising their hand, so I am gonna let you talk, Noah. You can unmute yourself.
I have a question about, like, are there any cons to design thinking?
Cons?
Yeah.
I don't know if necessarily framed as cons.
Or flaws, maybe?
So flaws really around the process, right? Not spending enough time and maybe the empathy and the problem, the designing stage. So, maybe just finding the problem in a way that when you ideate on solutions, it doesn't meet that customer need. So I think it's more of a timing type of thing, not spending enough time and often trying to rush through it, right? Without the next step and the gate for the next step. So I think that's a common flaw, but that's easily sort of rectified because it's iterative. So I think that would be sort of a flaw to it. But I've seen quick design thinking sessions where we've gone through this process in less than an hour, where we've gone through this process in a month. So obviously the problem that was solved in an hour was already well framed and had the empathy, and it was mostly ideation, and you can't really prototype or test, but there's different parts of the process you can spend time on depending on the amount of time. So hopefully that answers your question. Any other questions? Okay, so let's talk through an example just to give you sort of a flavor of that, and maybe that'll also talk to the question. So typically when we talk about design thinking, we talk about the exercise, I like to what I call the custom backpack design challenge. And really what it is that it's always broken up into 2 steps. Excuse me. And you usually have the materials to do this. And it's used to introduce you to the idea and this whole concept we just talked about design thinking. And it's really where you must build a backpack that meets the specific needs of your user, not a backpack for yourself, but a backpack for someone you identified as a user of the backpack. And then usually what we do is you go through the exercise, and then in every gate, you share your thoughts and your experiences. So how the exercise usually goes is that it's really critical to ideate around your user's need and not your own, because typically folks will design a backpack for themselves, right? Because they get excited and they have the materials, but it's really designing for a user. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a sister, maybe it's someone else. But it's really a backwards planning process, right? You start backward. You start with the user and what they will be using the backpack for, and you design backwards. And then experimenting with different designs of these backpacks allows for positive critical feedback. So you get feedback from the user who you're designing the backpack for, and that's really the test part of it. So really what you think about is when you talk about what was the purpose of design thinking in this challenge? Why is it important to empathize with your user when you're talking about the backpack? And then you really explain how you interpreted your user story or what they identified as a need to backpack. So typically when we run this exercise, you know, it talks about, oh, well, I want a backpack to carry my laptop, my books, and all my other devices. Some folks I want a compartment in so I can also have my lunch. I want a compartment that's can seal liquids away from the rest of the backpack. So you can go many different avenues and ways with this challenge. And we say, okay, how to use your mindset to design, entrepreneurial mindset to drive design of this backpack, and you solve a problem for the user that you've identified. So usually that's the first phase when we talk about the backpack challenge. The second part of it is then you actually sort of design and develop a prototype of backpack. You cut it, you take the different materials, you do different things to design your backpack using any materials that are provided that are made available to you. So that's where it's more hands-on, it's more constructive. And then what you learn at the second part is that it can be frustrating to identify users' needs, but it's key when you're designing and actually creating a prototype. And then the steps are, it just goes through the whole step: empathize, design, ideate, and prototype and test. And then what you take about, you say, okay, we reinforce the 5 steps in the process. We ask you what are some frustrations are that would arise while working with the human-centered process. And then what are any unanswered questions about this? So what I'm going to do now is play a sort of a video that walks through that.
In this activity, students are doing a backpack challenge using design thinking. So we are going to feel, investigate, imagine and plan, build and test, and at the end, share and listen. So we are concentrating in the Sustainable Development Goals number 4, qualitative education. So the design challenge is a female student living at the mountainside who walks to the nearest school, which is 5 kilometers away from her house. She needs to cross the stream and walk the muddy path. So the students will be creating a backpack that is waterproof and it's also quite lightweight. And then they are going to design what specified in their own room. Now, they are going to design the possible.
Hang on, I heard there's some issues with the volume. Let me see if I can change that a bit here.
And the worksheet will be provided to them. This is an example of the worksheet that they use for.
It's still very quiet.
All right, hang on. Give me one more second. Technical difficulties.
Understanding the situation of the Europe. This is an example. This are some good results of the backpack that the students created. And after they finish, they were going to be reflecting on their design thinking. Were they able to solve this problem and challenge themselves? The important part is to be able to collaborate with one another and listen to their ideas. How did they create this idea? And then were they able to cooperate with one another?
Yeah, so I apologize for the volume issues in the beginning, but what that intended to do is just walk you through the whole exercise. And really what we do, it really takes, that was probably a 4 to 5 hour exercise. We gave you a quick simulation. So you notice some of the bags were made out of paper, some were sketched, some were made out of actual materials. They all had different designs and different messaging. And that's a result of going through the challenge and designing different solutions. So what other questions do you have on design thinking before we talk about the next topic? And typically when we do this, we use markers, construction paper, anything we can find, right? Lego, but we create different exercises around that. And the whole idea is to get you practice working together, taking a problem that you've defined, ideating on solutions, and developing something visual or three-dimensional that you can present to a group. Okay. Any other closing thoughts before we go to the next topic? Okay. So now that you're armed with sort of the idea, to just bring us on the journey, which we've talking about, we start with the innovation mindset, the idea of thinking different, designing elegant solutions. We went through the entrepreneurial mindset, solving problems. Yes, not only in business, but solving problems and challenges in life. We talked about different types of innovation. Then we talked about a process to be entrepreneurial and be innovative, and that was design thinking. So now, taking all that, how do you really focus that on either developing a solution or a business idea? So let's talk about some basic vocabulary. So we're talking about the same thing, right? So when we talk about screening, it's really a mechanism for assessing the merits of a business idea or a solution before subjecting it to a full sort of analysis and plan. So this whole idea of prototyping and testing. So screening is another word for that. But in the business context, you want to screen your idea, screen your solution before you go into a full out plan or product or development. Brainstorming, which is a variation of ideation, but it's really having sessions specifically targeted on a specific topic in which a group of folks are forced to produce ideas. So again, an offshoot of ideation. Then you talk about focus groups, getting people together who are selected because of their relationship to the issue, to the problem being solved, or what you're discussing. So you usually want to engage a focus group. And then you look at all about window of opportunity. A lot of this is timing. So it's really a time period in which a person or a business can realistically do something different or enter a new market, right? So if I wanted to invent a music streaming service today, the time period for that either has to be very innovative or that much different from what is out there, or it has to be, something that's new. So that time may have passed because of all the music streaming services out there. That market's there, that market's mature. So either I'm going to do something that's revolutionary to that market, or I'm going to add something new to it. And then a barrier to entry, and that goes tied to the window of opportunity, something that creates a disincentive for another firm to enter a company's niche market, right? What do you have that's unique, that's different, that'd be hard for someone to replicate or create, a solution around? And the way I like to think about it is, often times when we talk about developing solutions and business ideas, it's all about building a better mousetrap. So I don't advocate, animal violence, like the first example with the grenade, not advocate for it, but there's different ways to look at the mousetrap, right? So that's the most brutal, right? The more traditional is in the middle, where you have cheese and you have some sort of stimulus. And the most innovative is on the right? So it's something where it goes in, the mouse gets caught, it's enclosed. So when you think about, developing solutions, there's different ways they can look, right? There's different approaches and there's different environments. But what you want to think about is empathy, like we talked about before, the focus group, the markets you're trying to track through, and then how do you develop that solution so that it could be prototyped? So question, and then we'll answer this, but let's see. So what are the 3 most common sources of new business ideas? And then briefly describe how each of these could spawn a potential. So what are the 3 common sources would you may think of that are business ideas, just type it in the chat. Well, what do you think? What could be some sources of new business ideas or sources of new solutions to problems? TV, yep, okay. What else? Okay. So let's get into that. Books, yep, that's a good one. So those are conditions where this information is housed. But when we talk about common sources of business ideas, they usually break down the different things that you get from those channels. Changing environmental trends, which you can get from TV, books, news media, and the internet. Unsolved problems, again, which you can get, and then gaps in the marketplace. So now we're going to talk through a couple of those. So I'm going to ask Jasmine to talk us through some of these. So Jasmine, talk to us about changing environmental trends as solutions for business ideas and opportunities.
For sure. So if you can distinguish between trends and fads, you can take advantage of various environmental changes. Most startup businesses are not sufficiently funded to ramp up quickly enough to capitalize on fads. So this just means to say that if you can figure out what's happening in the world, what's trending, you can find a business out of it, you can create a business idea out of it. For example, what's a recent trend?
So we can talk about sustainable energy, solar energy, right? So having solar powered energy, there's federal stimulus for it. There's a move to get to this whole idea of sustainability and protecting the environment. So one sort of environmental trend was this whole idea of being conscious of what's going on with the ozone layer and burning less fossil fuels. So a couple companies invented electric cars, then Solar City was it was a trend that they would install solar panels on houses to generate your own electricity. You would keep enough that you use, and they would provide additional energy to the grid. And for that, you would receive a discount. So the environmental trend that we wanted to be more environmentally conscious, wanted to use more sustainable energy sources led to an opportunity. And there's a bunch of businesses that are in the solar and sustainable energy space. So that's an environmental trend.
Yeah, and one more trend for me, I would have to say is out of COVID, you had like the up and coming, doing more meetings via Zoom and via a Skype, and so this just creates a new platform for other applications to come out and say like, hey, like people are on Zoom already, so why not have apps to do it? And so you had Clubhouse that was created out of the pandemic, and I don't even think without our life shifting into that type of arena would Clubhouse have been created, because you don't even have to show your face, you can just have audio. So that's another example of creating businesses out of trends.
Right. And then Clubhouse is a great example too, because they've gotten a high opportunity, they haven't even generated revenue, but it's basically the need for people to talk to each other. So it used to be party lines and conference lines back in the day, but what Clubhouse's thing is that you can have discourse, you can have conversation with a group of folks, you can be sitting in the same area, and it's very, the audio quality is great, the topics are interesting, and you can go into different rooms based on the topics that you're interested in. And that, yes, was a byproduct of the COVID pandemic. So that's an environmental trend, because the need to convene, to share thoughts, to share conversation, even beyond being on a video call, made Clubhouse unique. So let's talk about unsolved problems, Jasmine, and the example that you show here.
For sure. So many companies and businesses alike, they create business ideas out of problems. And so the example we're going to talk about today is Shea Moisture. And so with Shea Moisture, it was created by, her name is Zofa. She created Shea Moisture out of the idea that in American society, we didn't have many hair products that tailored to Black hair. And so what she did in the late 1800s and early 1900s is created shea moisture to tailor to black hair, because there's certain products that don't really mesh well. And so this just opens up opportunities to say, hey, there's a community out here, there's a customer group out here that doesn't have products that actually sustain their needs. So let's create one that does. And so that's why we're using shea moisture to just exemplify, you had a problem and now you have a solution.
Right. And then Shea Moisture was one of the early entrants in the market for, what they call ethnic products, right? So there's different textures of hair, there's different textures of skin, and they were one of the pioneers in that market, and many folks, followed behind them. So they showed that it was an opportunity, it was a business case, and they would solve a problem that people would pay for by providing them products that cater to their hair type, skin type, or any sort of thing. So that's a great example. And a lot of these are market entrants. So they're not alone solving the problem, but they paved the way for other products to come into that market. So let's talk about the third example, gaps in the marketplace, Jasmine. Let's talk about that, which sort of ties into what we're talking about with unsolved problems.
For sure. So I'm sure there's a number of us on this call who have purchased clothes outside of the United States, because let's be honest, like there's a ton of stores such as, like, I know Zara is global, but Aussie, ASOS, some people call it, is a store that is completely 100% online, meaning to say that there's no brick and mortar, there's no shop in the mall. And so this allows ASOS or Aussie to be able to garner more customer groups and just people in general, because you don't have to worry about, hey, I live in the United States and I want to go, like, I want these clothes from the UK. I don't have to worry about trying to figure out a travel plan to go get these nice clothes. I can just use the application. And so this is why a lot of companies already have, like, and this is nothing new, it's nothing primal, but a lot of companies, they just outsource from their applications and from the mall itself. And so with that being said, if there's cases where people can go into the store and purchase things, you can just do it from the app.
Right. And this is another sort of invention, the gap in the marketplace that was accelerated even before the pandemic. But now they have companies that come in, you answer a couple questions about your style, and then every month or every 6 weeks, they send you a box of items that you can try on, and you pay for the ones you keep, you send back the ones you don't. So the gap in the marketplace, and also to respond to the slowing sales of the pandemic, they saw a business opportunity or idea to bring the clothes or the apparel to you. And now there's always free returns and free shipping, right? So that's another thing that was addressed. So say you don't have any idea for none of that stuff resonated, but basically globally, there's this thing when you talk about ideas or solution to business ideas, there's this concept called sustainable development goals. And you saw a little bit about that in the video in the backpack challenge. If you could think about it, they were talking about goal number 4, quality education. But what the sustainable development goals were, a global recognized initiative that if we want to improve the environment, we want to preserve life on Earth and the planet for generations to come, we had to focus on these 17 goals that could transform our world. And a lot of the inventions, the ideas, the solutions, the innovations, and the entrepreneurial ideas more than likely fall in one of these 17 categories. So, no poverty, right? Equity, social justice, we talk about that. Food insecurity, zero hunger, right? Good health and well-being, having access to healthcare, quality education, gender equality, clean water, energy, sustainability. So going through this whole list, there's a whole lot of write-up information. I provide the link at the end that talks about these sustainable development goals, and they serve as sources for ideas. So now I'm going to play a video that talks more about the sustainable development goals.
The Sustainable Development Goals are a United Nations initiative to change the world. They will guide development programs in all countries for the next 15 years. If these Sustainable Development Goals are reached, we will live in a much better world by the time we turn 30. It's our generation's turn to shape the world. We need to know what these goals are, where they come from, and how we can help achieve them.
Sustainable Development Goals give the world the opportunity to come together and plan our future together. They give us a chance to think in an integrated fashion about the importance not only of social issues, but economic and environmental issues.
And yet it seems very few of us know what these goals are.
No.
It's like besides
No.
Houston, we do indeed have a problem. Right now, 1 in 7 people on Earth live in extreme poverty. 1 in 9 are undernourished. 58 million girls and boys are out of primary school. 73 million young people are unable to find a job. Every day, we're one step closer to heating up the planet beyond repair. With more than 9 billion people on our planet in 2050, it's likely there will be wars over water and other scarce resources. A few decades ago, our parents wanted the world to come together as one. Inspired by their stars, they would buy the We Are the World record and donate money for individual causes like hunger. It took 15 years and the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, the Gulf War, the Rwanda genocide, and the war in Kosovo for our parents to realize that to change the world we need a shared vision, a framework for action, and clearly defined goals and targets. So, in 2000, the United Nations launched a set of 8 clearly defined goals. Each of these Millennium Development Goals came with ambitious targets to reach before 2015. Most of us were born around the same time as world leaders adopted these goals. So what happened while we grew up? The good news is that 4 of the goals have been reached. In 2010, 700 million fewer people lived in extreme poverty than in 1990. 90% of all girls and boys were enrolled in primary school education. The bad news is that 1.2 billion people are still trapped in poverty. The financial crisis has left millions unemployed. Our planet is gradually getting warmer. The clock is ticking. Fortunately, our world is coming together around a new set of goals, the Sustainable Development Goals. These 17 goals are currently being finalized and have not yet been agreed, but hopefully our world leaders will adopt the Sustainable Development Goals in September this year. We need to get involved in these goals. These goals are the best shot we've got at ensuring that the world we will live in when we become adults will be safer, greener, and more equal. If we don't help keep them alive, who else will? So take this online survey today and let them know which future you want. But don't just stop there. Consider for a moment how you can use your knowledge, energy, education, and passions to make the world a better place by the time you turn 30-something. While you might fear that one voice won't make a difference, your voice counts. Tell your family, classmates, anyone and everyone about these goals and how we must come together to achieve them. Tell your parents not to vote for politicians who don't take sustainable development seriously. And when we get to vote in a few years' time, let's vote for those who care about our planet and our future. The Sustainable Development Goals are our goals. They're not just our parents' goals, or our governments, or the United Nations. Sustainable Development Goals are our generation's chance to shape the world we want.
So I know just gave you a lot of heavy information, but the Sustainable Development Goals have been approved. So since this video was sort of developed, but it is a framework on how we look at the future. So how many folks have heard of these goals just by yes or no in the chat? And it's okay if you haven't, but I just want to get a sense for how many were aware of the Sustainable Development Goals before this presentation.
I was.
Yep. Okay. No, yes, okay, a couple mixed. All right. No, okay. So far, so like 50-50. So again, you know, when you talk about innovation ideas is a perfect universe if you focus on these sustainable development goals and as specifically, you know, poverty, food insecurity, you know, there's a lot of work going on here in the county to really address that as well. And equity, social justice, if part of you are paying attention to the national climate, but it's really about creating a better world and creating a better environment for worlds to come. So even though the video mixes between sort of pessimism, you know, overall optimistic, right? So there's problems to be solved. We've always had problems to be solved. The goals just classify them in groups so that folks that are innovative, that are creative can focus, right? So that's what I want to leave you with when you talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. Jasmine, anything you want to add?
No.
Okay. So let's go again, the next set of topics. Again, I like to group things so you can understand, because a lot of Sustainable Development Goals talk about the environment and environmental trends, right? What's going on with the environment. So, you know, what are 4 environmental trends that provide the richest sources of business ideas? And then you can either describe the trend and provide an example or the type of business idea that you might create. So, you know, take into account what you just saw in the video, what you know from your experience. What are some environmental trends that are sources of business ideas? I'll give you a couple of seconds to think through that. Just type them in the chat or, you know, raise your hand if you want to speak to them. I'll give you folks a couple more seconds. Solar panels, climate change. Yep. Okay. Great. Some others. So those environmental trends sort of are grouped in electric cars. Yes, that's great. Okay. Recycling. Yep, that's another trend. So those are all grouped into these 4 sort of categories, right? So we talk about economic trends, social trends, technological advances, which a lot of you cited, and recycling is more of a social trend, but then political action and regulatory changes. So those are the 4, you know, groupings of environmental trends. So we'll go through those one by one. So economic trends. So they show how a region or, you know, country is doing financially. So buying groceries, borrowing money are just 2 ways economic trends play a part in our daily lives, right? And economies are always part of the daily news. You always hear information about stock market, about economies, about gross domestic product, which is one of the most common indicators used to track the health of a nation's economy. It includes a number of factors such as how we are consuming goods and how we are investing in goods, right? And then basically economy is made up of all the financial transactions between companies, consumers in a region or country. And when it's referred to, it's always talked about the economy of a specific country. For example, we hear about the US economy every day in the news. The US economy has created how many jobs? The US economy has had this amount of turnover. So you always hear about the US economy. And these trends could be thought of a pattern, right? It's a pattern. In most contexts, trends are formed and interpreted from data, right? And we have a data science person on here that's very interested in analyzing data. But usually when you look at trends, you look at trends through sets of data. So examples of economic trends, right? And some of these was already mentioned: global warming, climate change, financial markets control of oil, gas, and food prices. And then economists use this information to determine whether the economy is growing or experiencing a recession. So you hear about growth or you hear about recession. And then investors who invest in these economies use it to make decisions. So a bad economy usually means lower earnings and lower stock prices. So when you hear about the stock prices are down or up, it's a everyday moving trend around the sets of data. Jasmine, is there anything you want to add from a data perspective when you talk about economic trends?
Not really. Yeah, not really. I'll add to the end.
Okay. So the next trend is social trends, and recycling, we talked about that. So social trends can be defined as any type of activity that's participated by society. They can be long lasting or short lived. Like for example, right? Back in the 1920s, which is way before a lot of you were born, who would have thought that bottled water would be a big business, right? So water was free, came through taps, came into our homes, but with the growing consciousness about cleaner, healthy living, smart marketers correctly predicted that people will want to drink bottled water against water straight from the tap. And that industry has grown to $185 billion a year and is expected to reach $334 billion by 2023. So, and again, a simple thing such as water that came through a tap, someone talked about bottling it, purifying it. There's different times you can get water with different pH levels. You can get non-alkaline. There's all different types of water, and that's turned into an industry. Another example is the internet and social media, right? So Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, all introduced a new social trend by introducing a new way to connect with people from far and near. So that was definitely a revolutionized social trend that has spawned a lot of innovation, spawned a lot of ideas, and spawned growing businesses. The next one is really technological advances, right? So they provide an ongoing new source of business idea, like computer processing power, micro, processors, chips and computers, the size of TV screens, all that are technological advances that they've gone for business ideas. So back in the day, TVs used to be the amorphous things written by tubes. Now they're light as ever. You can mount them on walls and those sorts of things. And it's really important to recognize how technologies are used and how they satisfy basic user needs to be connected, to have access, to look at things. And once a technology is created, products often emerge to advance it. So the typical example is the Apple iPod. It's created a whole industry around digitizing music and accessories and playing music. And it's even gone online now into cloud and more streaming. So that's an example of a technological advance as a trend. The next one is, and some of you talked about in some of your examples when you talked about, policing and law, political action or regulatory changes, right? So there's new laws create opportunities for entrepreneurs to start firms and to help companies and individuals comply with these laws. So for example, changes in government regulations motivate entrepreneurs to start firms that differentiate themselves by exceeding the regulation. For example, there's basic regulations about how you design baby cribs, but if I'm an entrepreneur and I want to increase market share, I can design an extra safe crib and market my crib as being extra safe. And then political change can also create an environment for the emergence of new business ideas. So what we know now, the threat of domestic cyber and other terrorism, especially in Maryland, resulted in many firms becoming more security conscious and requiring projects or products that meet their changing security needs. So again, these are all examples of how political action and regulatory changes can lead to new ideas. So now I'll turn it over. So how can an unsolved problem create a business idea? And then provide an example. And anyone, you can type in the chat or you can raise your hand. So an unsolved problem can create a business idea. Let's think through some of the examples and think through some of the things that you've mentioned previously in the chat. Any comments in the chat? Katie, anyone's raised their hand?
No comments. I did have one idea on this.
Okay.
So this is something that I've seen. I think it's already almost on the market or becoming on the market. Radiant charging technology, because we all have so many cords and so many chargers. People are developing plates that you can set your cell phone or your items on, and it charges through. I think it's called induction. I forget what the electrical process is, but that way you don't have a zillion charging cords. You have to remember you can just put it on the charging plate and not worry about it.
Yeah, that's a great example, like wireless charging, right? So you have the induction cord in the receiver and the other that they build into phones where you can place it down and it charges the battery. Yes, that is definitely, and always losing a card, and now when you go and travel, when you travel, there's these plates where you can just rest your devices on and charge them instantly. So that is a great one.
We also had a comment from John that if there is an unsolved problem, it means there's a high demand for it, which accurate.
Yep, that is correct. That is correct, John. So let's talk about this a little bit more, right? So many companies have been started by people who have experienced a problem, and in the process of solving the problem, they really realized they were on to a business idea. They realized that they weren't the only one that had that problem, right? And once you successfully solve it for yourself, you realize that that idea represents a sustainable opportunity. One technique that entrepreneurs use is to find an instance where a similar problem was solved and apply that solution to a problem, to their problem. That goes back to the better mousetrap where I started with. So, there are a lot of ideas are just an improvement on an existing idea. There are ideas that are revolutionary, but sometimes most of the unsolved problems or the ideas or techniques that entrepreneurs come up with is a better way to do something that already exists. And then what we talk about really is that advances in technology often result in the problems for people who can't use the technology. And then if you develop a way to translate that or modify products and services based on those advances in technology, you can often capitalize on that opportunity as well. So just education or more efficient ways to use technology is also helpful. Another question. So how is finding a gap in the marketplace lead to new business ideas? Anyone in the chat or, Jasmine? Yeah, how does finding a gap in the marketplace lead to a new business idea until some of the other folks type? Can you give us an example?
We have Noah raising his hand, actually.
Okay, well, go ahead, Noah. Yep.
When you find a gap in the marketplace, it can lead to like new things, like as you were saying earlier, you can find a niche that's having a problem. For example, the thing people put in their cars, like you put your phone, you attach it to like the fan so that your phone stays up. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. So, to reduce distracted driving, they have these mounts that you put in your car so you can look at it and attach it.
And that's like a gap in the car industry. And when you find that niche and you make it yourself, like let's say the first person who made it, he just wanted to use this, or he or she just wanted to use their phone, and they made that, and then it can lead to new business ideas and different types of like ways to put it, and like just explore all types of options in that field.
And that's a great example, though, because again, another thing that's a byproduct of that, why people came up with that device, is that before, like having a navigation system or GPS was an extra cost in the car, but a lot of phones came with that. So instead of buying a car with you, wanted to mount that device in your car so you could look where you're going in directions and they get turn by turn. So there's multiple uses for that. That's a great example. What are some others? And is there another one? Okay, so look, there are many examples of products that consumers need or want, or that weren't available at all. And they're often targeted. Gaps in the marketplace are often targeted what we call niche companies, as Noah mentioned, right? Large mainstream companies often compete on price, but they lack the availability to sell products and services that don't fit their model. Back to that car example, right? There was no model to have that device integrated to the fan to hold up your smartphone so that you can see directions, or you could use it, or you could reduce distracted driving. They were outside of the mainstream, and they made it a perfect fit for a startup in the ancillary device market. They had it priced efficiently and those sorts of things. So now you're starting to see some of the newer vehicles with those type of mechanism built in, or even integrating the phone into the car so you don't have to look at it at all once you plug it in. And then the whole idea is really taking an existing product, like I said before, and then creating a new category by just completely looking at a different target market, right? So large retailers, Walmart, Target, they target the mainstream customer, but there's gaps in the marketplace that boutiques and specialty shops can fill. Like if I want a special item, I want model cars, or again, if I want to buy video games, I go to a GameStop or a thing, but that's a specialty shop. All stores sell electronics and video games, but there are specialty shops that still have a fit. One, you get, you join and you get membership, you get insights to games that haven't come out with, and it's just a boutique or niche that's always served well. So yes, it's available everywhere, but there's these niche shops that you can go to get those type of things. So back to it, right? It's all about building that better mousetrap, right? And not outsmarting the mouse, but sometimes the mouse can outsmart you and be very technological and advanced. So with that, I know it's a lot of content. Well, maybe we'll take another 3-minute break, okay? And then we can stretch and then we'll come back and we'll close out.
All right. Yeah, let's reconvene at 7:32. Anyone who needs to get up, take a quick break, come back. I will give a 1-minute warning. And in the meantime, anyone who wants to stay here and hang out, if you have questions or things you want to talk over with Mark and Jasmine, feel free to take these 3 minutes to do that.
Yes.
They're available to you.
I have a question.
Sure.
So have you ever invested in a business, like a startup that you kind of like the idea of?
Yeah, I do that all the time. Yes. So part of the time when you invest, right, you like the idea and you like the people that are executing the idea, right?
Yeah, and I was gonna ask what do you look for in a business that's most likely to be successful?
So for me, I often look at businesses what I know something about. I know something about the industry. I know something about the problem they're solving, and I have an idea of that problem, so I can gauge whether the solution will be a fit. But also, it's really about what they call understanding that there's a customer for it, right? Going back to the whole idea of empathy, right? A lot of times, and I'm a technologist as well, I'm so fascinated and amazed by technology that I think that it can solve everything. But the specific technologies that take off, that gets investment, and I judge pitch competitions and talk to a lot of startups, are ones that have a growing or well-defined customer that will pay for that or buy it, right? So it's really interesting. And again, it's not a science, right? It's more of an art. And then some of the most well-intentioned and well ideas for customers fail, and some of the things that you think will never have a chance take off, but it's timing and traction. But the goal is to spread those investment, look at different industry sectors, look at ones that are emerging, and then really placing some bets there.
It is now 7:32. So anyone who did get up to take a break, please reconvene. And I guess unless people have more questions about these topics, we can move on to the next item.
So, okay, I see another question. So Ava, how do I find grants for my inventions, and how do I connect with investors to help fund my idea? So there's various ways to do that, right? So grants, if it's a technology, there's a lot of federal programs, and I'll make sure we'll provide the links from, there's this organization called the Small Business Administration. They have grants and research grants if you're talking about technology. If it's intellectual property, like something that's unique and something that you're inventing, there's the Patent and Trademark Office. So there's a lot of government agencies that offer grants to protect your inventions, to discover your inventions, to explore your inventions. And then how you connect with investors is really through networking, through entering, is getting a mentor, entering pitch competitions, and just presenting your idea to a community, right? And it's with the age of the internet and social media, it's easy to connect with folks, but it's really finding the appropriate mechanisms to get an audience to help fund your idea. And again, as an investor, what they look for is, what is going to be the return of my investment? When can I expect to see my investment back? And also, is there a customer if this thing has traction? So that's one source, but it's a longer conversation, but we can provide resources. And it really depends on the invention, the idea of the company. There's different paths and different people that invest in those. And these are all great questions, actually. Any others? Okay, so the last section we're going to talk about, and we're going to sort of finish off with the exercises, techniques for generating business ideas, right? So specifically talking about business ideas, right? Because, the whole idea around entrepreneurship and innovation is to create a business, create something, grow, scale it, get funding, get investing, and make a change. And really, you can recognize new business ideas through casual observation, intuition, something you have a feel, because again, it's not a science, it's more art, but even luck, right? It's luck. You luck upon an idea or problem or something that you've experienced, and you luckily found a solution that meets that, and you can scale it. Other people have that problem, but not saying it's a gamble. There's ways to make it predictable, but a lot of it is really around timing, opportunity, and socialization. And you can use the three sources of business ideas that we talked about earlier to generate and ideate on different businesses. And then you combine that with brainstorming, focus groups, and research, right? So really it starts with observation, a gut feeling, intuition, or luck. Then you try to align it with the different trends or the things we talked about. And then you continue to brainstorm, talk to people about it, and research. So those are really the techniques around that. And I believe there's a video that's going to talk about that next.
6 creative ways to brainstorm ideas. During the brainstorm process, it can be easy to hit a brick wall. If your brainstorm session has reached a dead end, here are some creative ways to generate fresh ideas that your audience will love. Mind mapping. This strategy creates a visual representation of related terms and ideas that can generate creative content ideas. Create a diagram with a central main idea that you can branch off to correlating words or concepts. Use the web of information in the diagram to help you generate a well-rounded view on single or multiple ideas. Right braining. Release your creative thoughts by doodling incomplete images. Think of a general topic to doodle from and start sketching images associated to that topic. Be sure to draw images that are incomplete, as leaving out portions or aspects of an image can spark creativity later. Then take your different images and try combining them in different ways to generate a new idea. Provocative actions. Look at things differently by changing your physical surroundings or by verbally communicating in unexpected ways. Try shaking things up. Physically change a room by turning the chairs upside down or verbally make an off-the-wall comment. For example, could you design upside down?
What does the word design look like upside down?
Either way, unusual situations will ignite creative responses that you can pull ideas from. Break and build. This process is about breaking down and building up ideas to get a range of related information. Break down a general thought or idea into more detailed pieces of information, or do the opposite and build it up to reach a broader viewpoint. In the end, your solution can be based on the wide range of information from the process. Pessimist versus optimist. Find a creative solution for ideas from the conversation between a pessimist and an optimist. Start off a general topic of conversation with the phrase, "How about?" Then challenge the starting comment with a pessimistic response, followed by the optimist providing his answer to the pessimist comment. For example, "We do not know how to design an infographic."
We can hire an infographic designer.
"We do not have any ideas for him to design."
We can research ideas and hand him an outline.
By building upon each other's responses, a general idea can evolve into a more focused, relevant one. Randomness. Find the connection between a random word or thought and a general topic to develop a new creative idea. First, start with a general idea. Next, generate a random object and list words that can describe it or are associated with it. Last, pick the words from your list that can relate back to your general idea to form your solution. The next time you hit a brick wall, try using these creative development methods to make brainstorming for your content ideas a more fun, imaginative process with better solutions.
So again, I know we gave you a lot. We'll make this available to you, but we just want to expose you to different techniques for generating business ideas. And it all starts with brainstorming, and it shows you various different ways to brainstorm. So what are some thoughts or reactions to that video, if you guys have any, until we go into the sort of last exercise? So Jasmine, why don't you give us an example of how you brainstorm and you think through things, right? Can you talk through it? Because it covered a lot, but talk about how you use brainstorming for a lot of the activities and things you work on.
Sure, yeah, this is a common practice between everybody, like every single human being, regardless if you're in business or not. But for me, it's just identifying the problem first. And sometimes people just jump to solution, but I'm more so identify the problem and then ask questions. And I'm typically asking questions from the people who actually find that problem an issue or actually have the problem. I think that's very important. And so that's how I go about just brainstorming ideas before I get to a solution.
And it's okay. And then someone, Shana, start on how to plan something. Yep, that's an example. Okay, so here's our closing activity, right? So it's called If You Only Had $1,000, right? Because a lot of times we talked about you don't need a lot of resources to become an entrepreneur innovator, but we do have to bound it, right? So again, I'd like everyone to sort of think through the activity. And if folks want to share some examples, that would be great. If not, we could talk through it ourselves. But if you only had $1,000 to start a business, this whole exercise will have you quickly, again, we'll take a couple minutes, practice with the design thinking concept previously presented, go through quick ideation and brainstorming, right? And assume you can get your hands on $1,000 or more within the next 2 weeks. And assume in addition to that $1,000, you already have a computer, a printer, a smartphone, and a working vehicle, any type for those, or access to one for those of you that are not old enough to drive. Use the first 3 steps of the design thinking methodology: empathy, defining a problem, ideation, to generate some new business concepts that could be started. The goal is quantity, not quality. And take a couple minutes and prepare to share. So again, assume that you have $1,000, you already have a computer and a printer, you have a smartphone, and you have access to a working vehicle, whether you drive it or not, right? You can envision that you're driving if you have your license. If not, you have access to the working vehicle. What type of businesses could you start? And so I'll give you a couple minutes and then I'll ask for a couple people to share. And also, Jasmine and I are available for any questions in the chat. If you want to send to the group or you want to send us directly as you quickly think about your business idea. Don't spend too much time, but just what type of business or what kind of business would you start with those resources?
We have one person, Noah, saying that they would start a mental health business.
Great. Okay. A lemonade stand. Okay. What else?
Remember, guys, in the internet age, you don't necessarily have to be creating a tangible product to have a business. There are so many people who have online businesses with commentary, with performance, with art, with comedy. I'm sure you can all think of at least one person whose TikTok or YouTube channel you got into during the pandemic, and they all have Patreons and they're all entrepreneurs themselves. So it's not necessarily a physical product here.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, clothing. Okay, a personal styling company. Okay. Any others? So no one's interested in, I would start a graphic design company. I would print flyers off with my printer and send them out. I didn't say what size printer, right? I would design flyers, graphics. I could be a blogger, right? I'm influencer. I create my own YouTube channel.
I know some of you have video editing experience because I spoke with some of you guys during the interview. So, offering video editing could be a service that you could provide.
Right.
Pay for that all the time.
Okay. I would invest in the business and stock market. So, hey, that's a business, right? You could be a trader or investor. You'd have access to the computer in the market. Yeah, you could figure out a business out of that. Okay. A couple others.
We had one person saying a photography company to sell the images, which excellent idea. People constantly need stock images online. It's something I'm always looking for. So that's
a big
something
business.
people look for.
Yeah, that's a big business. Stock images, iStock, there's all kinds of, that would be a perfect business. Couple others. And again, nothing's too silly. It's just to ideate and to get you think like, an innovator entrepreneur. So, Kay, what type of business would you start if you had these resources?
Frankly, I'm going to draw on my own expertise and experience here. And I would, and this is something I've been thinking about as I got deeper into my career path. Eventually, I think I'm probably going to have to do it regardless, is becoming a consultant and just talking to other folks about my experience in grants and in local government and providing them with the information I wish that I had had when I started many, many projects that I am now working through.
Great. Yep. All right, who have we heard for it? So, Ariel, did you list a business? Oh, you said clothing. What type of clothing? Just general, or would it be anything specific? Okay, so Ava, talk to me a little bit more about the personal styling company. What would that do, and who would you cater to?
Think of your target market, your ideal customer.
Would you style athletes? Would it be, professionals? Who would personal styling? Who was the market for that?
Would it be focused on female presenting folks, male presenting folks, unisex?
Okay, we'll come back to you later. Think about it. All right, so Matthew, so how would you operate your lemonade stand in the age of COVID? So I assume you'd be doing, talk to me a little bit about the lemonade stand. Sell to people around the neighborhood. Okay. Working women. Okay. And Noah, talk to me a little about the mental health business. Type in the chat. How would you narrow that down? Who would be your customer for that? All ages. Okay, that's correct. Okay. So you provide them advice, practice, and resources.
I also want to mention regarding target markets and specialization, when you can start out with a general idea, and as you're working with folks, your audience will help you refine who you want to target. They'll give you feedback. You'll start noticing patterns in the folks that are coming to you for your service or your product. And you'll start thinking, this is the kind of people I'm getting in this. So I should start catering more and more to them because clearly I have hit a market that is interested in what I have to sell.
Great. Okay, adolescents, you narrowed the market, could be a better target market. Okay, so you all got the gist of the exercise, right? So that's great. Thanks for the feedback. Thanks for the interaction. Thanks for sharing those ideas, right? And, We'll find a way to get you research so you can work on those ideas, but going through this program and thinking through them is a start. So I encourage you to continue to think through them, enhance them if that's a path for you, or if not, just take the ideas around being innovative and entrepreneurial and apply them to any other aspects of your life. And really, this whole idea was to expose you to a bunch of different concepts, a bunch of different thoughts, because I know the first phase was really around specific industries. This was around a mindset and methodology for other industries and those that have that inkling. But to close this module out, when you're talking about business ideas, the common sources are environmental trends, changing environmental trends, unsolved problems, and gaps in the marketplace. We talked about that a little bit. And then when you talk about environmental trends, the ones we look at for new business ideas are economic trends, social trends, technological advances, and political action and regulatory changes, which we touched on. And then one of the things I want you to think about, many companies have been started by people who have experienced a problem in their lives and then realize that, one, they weren't the only ones that are having that problem, and they could represent a business opportunity if they could get more people on board. And then the last point is, gaps in the marketplace exist when there's products or service that consumers want, but aren't really available through larger firms or aren't available at all, right? So that's the better mousetrap, the idea of being niche, have a niche, being narrow and focusing on a market. So I know this is a lot of information. Hopefully you found some value, some use out of it, but there's additional resources that we'll make available, right? So we'll talk about the whole idea of, in addition to where innovative ideas come from, which is the book I believe most of you should have received, we'll make a PDF version available of this field guide to help you think about design thinking and solving problems like a designer. It's only available digital, but we'll send you the link to that. And then here are some reference articles: how to come up with hundreds of business ideas, more information on the sustainable development goals, 30 plus small business ideas that use skills you already have, 8 steps to starting your own business, and 5 tips to coming up with your million dollar business idea. In addition to other links that Jasmine mentions around technology, we'll make available to you as well. So on behalf of Jasmine and myself, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your interaction. And this has been a great session. And I'll pause here to see if there's any other questions or any other closing thoughts before we close the session. And Jasmine, anything else you want to close with? Any ideas, any parting thoughts?
That's about it. You already mentioned that I'll be sending out the links about the Norman design principles. I just think that'll put them over the top with their peers, against their peers in terms of understanding design principles, because a lot of people don't even know those, mapping and whatnot. So that's about it.
Okay. And if we are ever able to gather again and connect, Mr. Bugs, I know usually we talk about field trips, but having the folks come over or see the Innovation Hub or some of the other places in the county at the Bowie State or at the University of Maryland. I know a couple years ago we did a tour of the University of Maryland of some of the innovation spaces there. Maybe we'll provide additional links to those, and maybe sometime we can convene again, or I don't know, we'll figure out a way to do a field trip or something.
Yeah, that I believe I mentioned this to you guys during the interviews. As the situation evolves with the pandemic and as things open up, we might be able to organize something like that. So we have a question about where the Innovation Hub is on PGCC campus.
So it's in the Center for Advanced Technology. It's on the first floor, but it's also a physical and a virtual space. So a lot of the program is online, but it is actually a redesigned computer lab that's been designed around the principles of design thinking. So there's a lot of areas to collaborate, a lot of areas to ideate and prototype. You can write on the wall, which are whiteboard based. You can develop prototypes. You can check out equipment. So it's on the Largo campus of the community college. Me wearing my Incubate hat, I helped to design that. So it's a nice space. But fortunately and unfortunately, we launched it right before the pandemic. So we are, as campus opens up back in the fall, the space will be available for people to access.
All right, does anyone have any other questions for Mark or Jasmine or comments before we do the final closeout, since this is our last session of the second module? All right, I don't see any other raised hands or comments, so I'm just going to reiterate the next steps for you guys. As I said, the people who have attended at least 3/4 of these sessions in person, I will be sending you guys a completion certificate, also some kind of small graduation present. I expect that over the course of probably next month, because we have a few things we have to print out before we send those off to you. So don't hold your breath on that, but you will get it eventually. And I will email everyone when those are in the mail, so you can expect them. We also, as Mark and I just spoke about, we might be able to organize some field trip opportunities for you guys as things evolve over the summer. That's something to keep an eye out for. I want to reemphasize that if you guys are interested in using me as a job reference, I am happy to serve in that capacity. Just send me an email or give me a phone call letting me know that you've listed me and what the opportunity is. I will have this presentation, the recording of this presentation, all of the links and resources that we talked about will be added to the website in the next couple of days. That's again, cityofbowie.org/work training. And anyone who has questions for me, questions for Mark, questions for Jasmine, questions for Jesse, or about any of our presenters from the first module, feel free to get in touch with me and I can forward your missives on. And also the contact information for all of those folks is in the presentations, which again, are all on the website. So I really appreciate everyone who logged in, everyone who is participating and making comments and ideas. This is what makes the presentation good for us and good for you, because you're able to talk about the things that are relevant to your lives. So thank you again so much for joining us on this third iteration of the Workforce Development Program of the City of Bowie. We really appreciate it. And you will be getting an email from me with a link for feedback for the program, for this module, and just in general. Again, we're always here for you. We are a resource for you guys. We don't want this relationship to end. If you want to keep talking to us and getting more info, we want to provide it for you. So I wish you guys the best of luck on your education and career journeys. And we hope we hear back from you guys with great things. Any other questions before we end the session?
No, and this has been great. Again, we wanted to expose you to different mindsets and different opportunities. It's a lot to digest, but we'll be available to answer any questions and help you as you think through these.
And I saw a hand raised. Did you want to raise your hand and say something, or was that a mistake? No. Okay. Again, thank you guys so much. I am now going to end the session. Have a great week, and you guys will hear from me soon via email. Good night, everyone.